Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are excited and thrilled to have Lauren joining us to chat a little bit about herself, but also about the theme community science, because I know that was a question that we just polled everyone. So for those of you that clicked yes, that you have participated in some of these projects, great. For those that have said no, not yet, maybe because you don't know what they are, well, we got the perfect person here that will be able to share what those details are and more details about that topic. So Lauren, thank you so much for taking time to chat with us. We really appreciate your time. I know our members have appreciated getting to know our staff that work behind the scenes and work at the museum. So good morning to you, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Wonderful. Yeah. So we could definitely just dive right in, because with that question of, you know, that we polled our members that are joining us today, it said, you know, no, not yet. And for those maybe that don't know exactly what community science is, we'll definitely dive into that more, but just a broad umbrella of what is that community science?
Yeah, so community science, and it's also been referred to as citizen science. The terms kind of has been evolving as the field itself has been evolving. It's basically, in like the simplest terms, people without formal training helping people with formal training as scientists conduct science and do research. So it's kind of always been happening, and it's definitely always been something going on at the Nat. But now it just kind of has a name and a field. And you guys, I think, are probably hearing my daughter in the background. Sorry.
That's great. No, she wants to chime right in. She wants to be part of this chat, and she's one of the next generation, right? The next generation of community scientists yes. And next generation of environmental stewards and of this region that we love so much. That is great to hear the chatter of everyone that wants to participate. But you definitely have a unique role, Lauren, and I don't think, for those that don't know, you're the community engagement manager. Can you share with us your story of how you got to where you're at, and the path that you took to get to your current role right now? Because I hear that it's a unique one, and it's not one that it's almost similar to what all of our staff have, where you kind of started in one area and then you slowly change over time. So would you be willing to share with us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So my undergraduate degree is in art history. And so I studied that, and I just kind of knew I love museums. I'm from San Diego. I love the Natural History Museum. Went there all the time and was really interested in kind of working there while I was still figuring out what I wanted to do with my life. And I started at the front desk just to get my foot in the door, to start anywhere I could. And then I started doing things in education, and I thought I was into museum collections. And so kind of taking care of museum collections, and what does that mean? The environmental monitoring that goes into it, and the upkeep of the specimens, that's its own sort of a field. And then kind of being at the museum, I started meeting all these people and learning about all these stories of people that just kind of were self-taught kind of scientists, naturalists. And I thought that was really neat. And I kind of never realized, I always thought of science as this very formal thing, and you had to go to school and be formally trained. And it's something I always loved in the natural world, but I also was kind of felt like I wasn't a part of that world of science, so to speak, until I started working at the Nat, and then I kind of realized, like, oh, anybody can do this, and it takes so many different forms. And then I was inspired to go back and get my master's in zoology. It's like conservation zoology, so it's not so much like taxonomy and things like that, but it's more about community engagement and grassroots movements, and engaging the people in communities with conservation, because that's intrinsic to what's going on. We're the ones impacting stuff, so we need to be the ones working to save it. And so and through that, I learned a lot more about community science, and the museum's community science projects as well. Plant Atlas, the Herp Atlas, the Bird Atlas projects that have been going on for a long time, where people are collecting information about local plants and animals, sharing it with our researchers, and helping us kind of document basically this place we call home, which I love that aspect of it, because it's really kind of like crowdsourcing for science, it's this information belongs to everybody. So it got me really passionate about that. And I feel like the museum does a great job of trying to make it accessible to people. For example, the Botany Atlas, Plant Atlas online, and the Herp Atlas online. You can go online, you can search what is here. And so it's totally like up to you. That's free information. It belongs to all of us. So I get to work to kind of help make that happen, which is really exciting. And I love getting to do that.
It's wonderful. I like how you mentioned that this is like a form of crowdsourcing for science and crowdsourcing for research as like a reason that interested you, to get involved in more specifically in this field. Were there any mentors or any people that played that kind of a role as you were going through and deciding, exploring more about this interest of crowdsourcing? Or I know you mentioned a little bit of the different Atlas projects that we have at the museum, but is there kind of someone or a group of people that really helped you, really spark that interest in you?
Well, I have to say, like a lot of the volunteers at the museum, whenever I talk to them, I'm always kind of blown away by maybe this formal job they had, which is in no way related to, I mean, everything's related to natural history in a way, but so they're an engineer. And so they weren't technically doing that day-to-day naturalist things. But in their volunteer time and in their spare time, they know like more about the birds of our region than most people, getting close to Phil up there, though Phil is like, hard to reach, but just kind of blown away by these, people will call them amateur, I think, just for a lack of a better word, because they're not formally trained people. In the sciences. So I do feel like meeting those people at the museum, meeting our curators at the museum, and how valuable they find the information that people are sharing. A lot of times I think the curators really couldn't do it. Like the researchers can't do it without these folks. And so I kind of was really inspired by that. And then I would say people like Dr. Michael Wall at the museum, he's always been really inspiring to just kind of be like, get out there and do it. Anybody can do it. It's science. It's not like science, and it shouldn't be this overwhelming thing. So he is always definitely really encouraging of developing my skills and things like that. But in general, it's more of just every time I meet people that I'm working with on these projects, if they call them volunteers, community scientists, I'm always kind of blown away by their own expertise and how willing they are to share it. And I find that that's more inspiring than anything. And just being able to connect people with the information with other people with the information. I enjoy getting to do that. So.
Oh, that's so exciting. I shout out to all our volunteers that are out there that are the naturalists or people that are passionate and enthusiastic about the different science that we have, the different projects that we have at the museum. That's so great to hear that was those are some of the people that you found as inspirational for you. And so you mentioned some naturalists, and you mentioned some words like community science and citizen science. But how has so it's always been an important role and an important piece of the Nats history of having citizen science and community science. But how has that role evolved over the years, from when we were founded by amateur naturalists, and to where we're at today, and and getting more in community engagement? How has that evolved over time?
Yeah, I feel like as the field of science has progressed and become more formalized, because it used to not be a couple hundred years ago. It's kind of still relatively a new thing. And then in the field of though people have always been doing it like informally, like a formal field, I feel like the same is true with community science and citizen science. So it was just kind of something that people always did, always happened. Scientists always had to have help. And now it's just kind of formally recognized with the term. And I feel like as that's been going on, the museum's really been founded by naturalists. It was just people that were interested in what was going on here in the natural world, started documenting it, collecting it, and sharing that with people. And then that kind of became natural history. Before, it was just people interested in the natural world, and then some of those people went on to become formal scientists and got training that way, and it became a field unto itself. And so I feel like that's kind of, the museum has followed that with community science. So now we're recognizing it as it's something we've always done, but now we're kind of putting a person out there like myself, creating a role to help foster it more, because it's always kind of fallen on the backs of the researchers to do and collaborate, and that's a lot on top of what they're already doing. So having help from someone like me, and also being able to offer different sorts of activities for people to participate in. So maybe people don't want to be a plant atlas volunteer where they're collecting plants, but they just want to go out and make some fun observations of wildlife on a weekend, you know. So I can help foster things like that, and then I can help foster deeper engagement too, that's more formal and more supportive of the researchers' work. So I see like the co-evolution of the museum and community science. It's like, it's just like evolving as a field on its own now, and we're recognizing that more and trying to engage our community more in it and empower them more to kind of realize, like I was saying, like this information belongs to all of us. It's not like a museum doesn't own this information. It's really for everybody to use and to make our world a better place with it.
That's so exciting. Yeah, hearing you say that kind of reminds me of what I love about community science and citizen science projects that we've done is that it really allows for it. Like you mentioned, you could enter it at any level, right? The level is that you love it, or you're enthusiastic about it, or you're curious. You know, you could enter these projects, or you could enter into these types of programs at any level that you're at, because luckily we have someone like you, and it's so exciting to chat with someone that can easily, maybe help foster, someone that's maybe only curious to then grow into wanting to do a little bit more. And there's someone that they could talk to that can foster that path for them as well. Kind of like similar to how the people that you talked with and have inspired you are doing to other people. So I love chatting with you about that. One question did come up, because we've talked about different Atlas projects that we have. What was the Botany Atlas project? It's not a one-time thing, right? It's kind of these projects that have been and continue to be ongoing. Has there been any fun stories that come out of these Atlas projects that we have, whether that's someone finding something, or observing it, and then our scientists getting a hold of it and sparking further research of that?
Yeah, so there's all sorts of neat stuff that comes out of it. It's kind of like the spirit of like exploration, and you kind of like, if you're always looking, you're gonna find things. You never know what you're gonna see, if you're open to those possibilities. And so with the Plant Atlas especially, it was like a very formal project where people actually went out and collected plants. They were specially trained by the museum, and then it's been continued to be constantly updating, because our plant communities are changing. New things are coming, certain things are unfortunately or fortunately leaving, depending. And so it needs to be constantly updated. And our curator of botany, though he tries, cannot be everywhere making observations all the time, Dr. John Redmond, because he is prolific, but even he can't be everywhere all the time. And so he takes actually observations from an app and a website. It's basically like crowdsourced observations of plants and animals, where they're found and when they're found. And he supplements the Plant Atlas with that. So you can see now like museum specimens, and then layered on top is a map of those iNaturalist observations. So you get a really complete picture of what the plant community is looking like at any moment somewhere. And he goes online and he's constantly IDing all those plant observations on iNaturalist, which are thousands upon thousands. He's like a record holder. I think he has like over 200,000 observation identifications now, which is, I don't know how he does that, but from that, like all of those numbers, he's actually found people have documented plants on there that hadn't been seen in 100 years. They're called lost plants, is what he calls them. It's this lost plant project of, we have them in our collection, but they haven't been seen, in 100 years again, anywhere in the county. Are they still here or not? And so trying to get to the bottom of that, and then lo and behold, somebody sees it on iNaturalist, documents it, and he'll actually go in and contact them and, you know, find this, and I want to get a sample of it, and this has been lost for 100 years, or if it was still here, gone locally extinct in our area, or so really cool things like that. Sometimes new behaviors, for example, with the Herp Atlas, they do the same thing. They have the museum specimens, and then layered on top of that, they layer these iNaturalist observations that people are making every day in Southern California and Baja California. And so they've documented new behavior of like coyotes predating on rattlesnakes, which hadn't been documented before, but somebody snapped a photo of a coyote with a red diamond rattlesnake's mouth and posted that. And so there's all sorts of neat stuff like that. You know, I wouldn't know that that was new, but you might just say that's kind of neat to see and take a photo of it and post it. And then somebody on the other side who is a specialist in that will say, oh my gosh, that's like, we've never seen that, or that's really rare. And also, like, some of the citizen scientists do know. They're like, this plant has not been seen. They will know that because they're so well educated on it and be sharing things. So it's really neat to see. It's kind of like that spirit of discovery. You never know what you're going to find. If you're just out there making observations and sharing them with people, you could see something that you think is normal and it's not.
Yeah, that's so great. And that's, I guess that's where it comes in, right, where everyone can act as an observer for our scientists and researchers that are eager to get a lot more specimens, or either find a lot more observations, but they just can't be everywhere at once. So, you know, the space alone, you know, San Diego County alone is such a large space, let alone the region that we have specimen collections for. So it's a great way to get people involved at different levels, to, you know, to act as observers and bring that research back to the San Diego Natural History Museum.
Yeah, it's definitely, and like, not only can't they not be everywhere, but there's also just like, you know, your own backyard better than any researcher is going to know it. You know what's visiting, when the birds are changing, when the plants are blooming, things like that, which is all really important, especially now as our climate changes. For you to be able to share that and document that with people, that helps just give kind of a more accurate picture of what's going on in our environment, and then how do we respond to that, how can we mitigate that and help make our communities healthier for all of its inhabitants, humans and all the plants and animals. So
right. No, great. And I love how you mentioned backyards, because I think the pandemic and the COVID-19 has caused many of us to be spending more time either in our backyards, and any green spaces that are maybe around our neighborhoods. What has kind of, can you talk a little bit about any of the impacts that you know, COVID-19 or the pandemic has had on community science? And, you know, are there any silver linings that you see to the pandemic? I know we're on the other end of it. It's no longer an emergency crisis, but you know, it's still around. But what, you know, is there anything that has come out of that? It's like, okay, well, at least we know this, or we have discovered this, or, you know, a silver lining to it.
Yeah, I would definitely say there's been, like, just anecdotally, I could say, more interest in people contacting me about it, wanting to know in general what they can do. The City Nature Challenge is an annual big community science event that's a BioBlitz. So we're going out over a limited time. It's 4 days, and we're documenting all the plants and animals we can find in a specific region. And our region we do is San Diego. So that's where we are. And it's a competition worldwide. And this last year, I think largely because of the pandemic, it was like we had more cities than ever. It was like close to 600 or something cities participate, and then millions of observations, which was just like kind of like almost exponentially rising. Like, so the project itself is growing, but also people were kind of interested to see how they could tap into what was going on closer to them, and then share that and feel a little bit engaged. Because the fun thing about it is you're making an observation on one side, and then on the other side, somebody's helping identify it, and researchers are pulling it into their project. So it's not just like, I want to know what that plan is, and then you just know what that plan is. It's like, I want to know what that plan is, and then there's a whole world of people out there that are also interested in that plant that you saw or the animal that you saw. So you're kind of adding to this larger collective body of knowledge. And I think people during the pandemic kind of nearly needed to feel a little more connected to other people as we weren't getting to do it in person. So yeah, it seems like numbers for community science are going up. And then it's kind of like anytime people participate in something, they kind of realize like, this is fun. I want to keep doing this. And so those people keep participating, which is exciting. We're getting a lot of activity and interest from people. So I do think that that's kind of a silver lining.
Absolutely. No, yeah. And I know that we chatted with Emily Blanchard, who is managing, she's a project manager for the Urban Canyons Initiative that's coming out of the San Diego Natural History Museum. And what kind of role is community science going to be playing with that Urban Canyons Initiative? How are we going to be able to maybe intertwine those two things where we can get people involved?
Yeah, so the Urban Canyons Initiative is really exciting. What we're trying to document wildlife in people's yards in 2 neighborhoods in San Diego. So we're looking at Sierra Mesa and the Choyas Creek watershed area, those 2 neighborhoods, and we're having people actually participate and allow us to put insect traps in their backyard. We're going to be doing some environmental monitoring as well, and then also acoustic monitoring for birds in certain areas. So we're kind of documenting what's going on there. And these are all, it's basically areas that researchers would never get to go into as somebody's backyard. Like that's really rare. And so people have been really generous and allowing us to do this and set up these traps. And right now we're kind of in a pilot phase of seeing how it goes. And understanding kind of how these our neighborhoods in San Diego. We're really lucky to have all these canyons. We have over 150 canyons that are kind of like interspersed with development in our neighborhoods, and how animals and plants kind of interact and move within these canyons and also within our neighborhoods. So people might think, oh, my backyard, it's like, I planted all these things, there's nothing natural there, but you have like a ton of insects that are in there that you probably had no idea. So like we're trying to track those and identify them, and then those insects are going to affect the birds and the lizards because they're going to eat them, and then that affects the other mammals you might find in the area, like coyotes that might be eating the lizards or the cottontails. Or so it really will give us more of a picture of these spaces that we don't have, because they're backyard spaces, they're not public spaces. And the canyons themselves, like as well documented as they have been, they still, like I said, these things are constantly changing. So they haven't been updated as far as research goes in a while. And so getting to update that and get a clearer picture of these spaces, because they're really important for keeping our environments healthy. Like they filter rainwater, and they offer all sorts of benefits to these communities that we probably don't even realize.
That's one. No, I love it. I love hearing how the Urban Canyons Initiative and community science are going to be woven into it, and it's going to be a major role for that initiative. But for the members that click that they haven't yet participated on in any community science, what recommendations would you make for them that are for the members that are joining us today and on our member meetup? How can someone that's interested get involved with any community science programs that we have at the NAP, or any projects that you could maybe mention to them that would get them a good entryway or a good starting point for anyone that's listening?
Yeah, so right now Urban Canyons, we already have all of our participants for that. But we do always have community science projects going on that people can join. So a great way is to check out our community science page on the NAP's website. And I see that Ewan's sharing that with everyone right now. And so on there are listed projects that some are ongoing. They go on all year long. Like I mentioned, the Plant Atlas, the Herp Atlas, which is reptiles and amphibians. We have a Bumblebee Atlas as well. So those different atlas projects that use the iNaturalist app that I shared. And there's even a guide on our community science page of how to get started with iNaturalist. It's a PDF, but it's pretty user-friendly. It's a website and an app. And they can use that and make observations all year long. Even if they're not adding to these specific projects, you could do it all year long. There's a project right now going on called Snapshots of Cal Coast. So if you're anywhere within like a mile of the coast, making observations while you're there, that helps. They use that information from the entire coast of California and start to highlight areas that are changing, possibly due to climate change, sea level rise, things like that, and how that's affecting the plants and animals found there. So you could do this all year long, making observations and adding to them, and just checking our website to see what we're offering, because we highlight different projects all year long that you can take part in. But there's always something to join.
Wow. I just thought of a couple more questions that I wanted to ask, but I know we're out of time. Lauren, if you can believe it or not, like we're at that limit. Emily, you made sure to let us know, hey, we need to start wrapping this up. Our time is up. So Lauren, with that, we want to thank you for taking time to chat with us and to meet with virtually meet with some of our members that are joining us today. I know I had a blast listening to everything that you had to share, and I know we mentioned a lot of different projects and a lot of different Atlas projects specifically, or ways to get involved. And we're going to make sure to link you to all those, to all the references that we posted or that we shared. We want to make sure that we can get those all out to you. But Lauren, thank you so much again for taking time to meet with us. We had a blast chatting with you.
Yeah, that was so great. Thank you. I really enjoyed it. And I'm really happy to also, if people have more questions or something, if they want to share them, I'm happy to answer them after email or something like that. If they email
all right, folks, you heard it here. So if you have any other questions, feel free to shoot them over to us, send them over to either Emily. We're going to welcome Emily back so she can share a little bit more details about what's coming up, or how you can maybe get connected with Lauren if you do have any more questions.